Hey everybody, it's Logic Bomb 82 from the Mature Minded Gamers. We are a group of adult gamers who have jobs and lives, but also several passions, including video gaming, board gaming, and much more. You can join us by visiting our website, maturemindedgamers.com. Today we're bringing you our Star Trek podcast, where we cover the latest news and all things Star Trek. Hey everybody, it's Eric from the Mature Minded Gamers. We just finished episode 2 of Star Trek Picard titled Maps and Legends. So let's get started with introductions. First, we have a new guest to the podcast. Jenny's joining us today.
Hi.
Jenny, welcome to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your Star Trek history, what you've watched and what your favorite series is?
I've been watching Star Trek forever. I've watched all of them. My favorite is Voyager, and my least favorite was Deep Space Nine and The Enterprise. I didn't care for that one that much.
I knew I liked you, Jenny.
She's out.
Out.
I guess you don't agree.
That's Brad and Will's favorite, so I always give him a hard time about it.
Oh.
And the other crew with us today is Will, Brad, and Mike. They were on the first podcast as well. All right, let's get started with this. It starts out how the whole attack on Mars happens, and I thought this was a great scene. What did you guys think of this one? What really stood out?
I think it kind of confirmed some things we talked about last week that, or at least something I talked about last week. The synth had something to do with like running Mars, basically, or running Utopia Planitia. So I was glad to see that, but still have lots of questions as to why they would have revolted.
I thought it was pretty unique that the synth that we was following was called F8 for, kind of like fate. And also I kind of noticed that he tried some things that Data had worked on for years, like trying to understand humor. Like he laughed at that joke and then he said he didn't get it. Some emotions there, tried to emulate some emotions. Do you guys think that's going to play into anything later on?
Nope.
No, not really. I don't think it was. I mean, as far as just like the emotion chip, I don't think that was ever developed. Though I kind of take that back, I guess, because with Daj and her twin sister, I mean, you do see some sort of emotion technology that potentially that Maddox obviously had developed and did something with.
So you think Daj is a android?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, you do too, huh? See, I don't. I think she's like kind of like a hybrid, almost like a Borg, like a human hybrid.
I'm going to meet in the middle of both of those theories and say that that's how Bruce Maddox made Daj and whatever the woman's name, the twin's name is using a cross between the, Data lore model and some Borg technology.
I mean, we got to think too, Data's first daughter in the Next Generation, Lau actually did experience emotions, even though her positronic brain was based off of Data's. So, I mean, I think it's definitely possible for, if they built something along the lines of Data without any like special chips or anything, for her to be able to experience emotions as well. And I did think it was interesting, how it appeared that that particular android was activated. So, I wondered if it was something like, like we talked about last week, where the holograms, the original EMHs, were being forced to do manual labor and mining, and you could kind of tell they were almost resentful of their fate, and wondering if that's what pushed the androids to that. But it looks like from what we've seen this time that might not be the case.
What do you guys think he killed himself at the end?
I was wondering that same thing myself.
So that way, knowing that data could be transferred, they could really see any of the information of where the code came from. They couldn't trace anything back to who was sending the commands to sabotage the station, is my thinking.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I kind of thought the same thing, that he was just sort of biting the cyanide pill at the end to have his memory erased. But some part of me, wonders if you guys kind of theorized that the emotions chip played into it a bit. So if he had developed some sort of emotions or attachments to those he just killed, I could see why he would do that. But yeah, I'm not sure either.
Kind of seems to me like he was ordered or programmed to do it.
Yeah, I was definitely kind of thinking that too. And I kind of agree with you as well, Will, that they were trying to make sure there's no evidence. But to me, I thought everything blew up, but maybe that part of the Utopia didn't. I'm not sure, of the shipyard. All right, let's move on. So we get two scenes in the next segment. One where Picard is back at his vineyard or chateau, and he's talking to his Romulan housekeepers, Lars and Zaban. We kind of find out that they are former Tal Shiar, and we get a little bit of old school Dixon Hill stuff for Picard going on here. So him and Lars go back to Dodge's apartment and investigate basically everything that's happened so far. Supposedly there was some murders there and a big fight, and they get there, and then it's switching back where Lars is talking about the secret Romulan police and maybe the more secret Romulan police called the Zat Vash. And so we hear that it's Zaban says it's more of a myth for children and to scare people. And I think that's kind of where we get the legend part of this episode title. What stuck out to you?
I thought it was pretty cool how you could see the technology change from, what was it? How many years has it been? 20 years since, the Next Generation and the last movies and things, and how they're kind of using more of an augmented reality type technology to be able to scan things. And I thought it was kind of interesting that they were able to see the recording up until he was at the replicator going to get some food, and then they stopped there. So why not scramble the whole thing? And I'm kind of curious to find out, like, if they kind of erased everything, including like the explosion and stuff, why didn't they just really erase her existence completely? Like if kind of like towards the end of the episode, there was kind of alluded to the fact that everything was just kind of created on the spot for her past and everything. Well, why couldn't that have just been kind of just wiped clean slate as well? Why did any of it get kept? So I was kind of curious to that. And the part where they were looking like in the phone book, and it'll come up with a real quick solution and be like, oh, if you do this, that, and this, it always seems like the classic trope of Trek to come up with a solution by making up shit.
She does reference that, this is Romulan tech and that it's secret tech and that she's using it to basically recreate it. And Picard makes a reference, well, that's not even allowed in Federation, and I've heard it's not very reliable. And she says, that's what we wanted you to think. So I think that's why maybe we haven't seen that tech before. But I also found it funny that she also references the fact that the Romulans hate and fear synthetic life forms, and they're kind of anti that, and they have been.
Well, I don't think she said that all Romulans hate AI and synthetics. I think that she was saying that that's the Zat Bash or whatever however you said that was kind of their core fear. But I guess she did kind of say that the Romulans in general were distrusting of it.
It's just AI though.
Huh?
That was just AI though. I mean, because like they were just using technology. The technology she was using and the research she was doing and all the stuff had nothing to do with like the AI controlling like their ships, and everything was like they controlled it.
Yeah, that's kind of the direction I was heading.
Oh, my bad.
So did anybody else get the Dixon Hill vibe from this? That was the first thing I thought of. Picard's on a mystery.
I didn't really get that. At first, I found it was kind of disjointed, and it took me a few minutes to figure out exactly what was going on in that particular scene.
Yeah, I agree.
It seemed kind of rushed.
All right, let's move on. Next up, we see Daj, and she's getting romantic with Narek, so that moved along very quickly. I thought it would be more of a gradual thing personally, but what do you guys think of this scene? Not a lot there, but
what was her actual name? It's not Daj. Her twin sister's not Daj.
No, I don't recall her name.
They mentioned it in the first episode, and I just don't remember what it was.
They mentioned it in this one too, but I didn't catch it. The main thing that I got from this scene is obviously Data was, skilled in all aspects. And obviously so is the two androids that are his daughters. Tashiar and Data's child. That's all I can say.
Well, the thing that stood out for me the most is that she should probably dump him because he won't talk to her about anything. And that's just not, I don't know. I would be a little suspicious of this person, especially for somebody who has the intellect that she should possess. I don't think she should be that naive.
Well, she's also jumping into bed with somebody that she knows nothing about, So, I mean, what
Yeah.
kind of actually person does that in the first place?
Well, maybe having spent as much time as she did around the Romulans, it could just be, status quo for her.
All right, so next scene, we get Picard meeting with his doctor. We speculated on this quite a bit because there was a shot of them two together, who this guy might be. We find out that he is from the Stargazer. He was with Picard on the Stargazer, assuming he was the doctor on that ship. They didn't actually specify, but that's what we'll go with. And then he mentions that Picard has the illness that he was forewarned about at the end of the Next Generation, which I think you mentioned, Brad. You wondered if that was going to be a part of this, and we find out that it is.
The only thing with that is it's much less a thing than it was at the end of All Good Things Part 2, which was interesting. They said that that was a theoretical timeline and it could occur, but that it wasn't guaranteed. So I'm kind of glad to see that it wasn't a sure thing. But otherwise, no, I didn't glean a lot from that really, aside from it's just one more person telling him not to go back out into space.
Yeah, it's kind of how I thought too, because from what I remember, it wasn't like a guarantee. He just had like the marker that he could have one of several syndromes, and that was one of them. And then that potential timeline, he had it. So yeah, it was definitely interesting that he did in fact develop it.
And they did leave it wide open too. He could die at any time, or he could last a while. Like they didn't specify at all. So, which makes sense because obviously the show's been renewed for season 2. All right, so the next up, we get Picard traveling to Starfleet headquarters to request a small ship and crew, and we find out what exactly went down that broke him and Starfleet up, basically. We get a lot of information about why Starfleet didn't want to help the Romulans and why Picard stood his ground, and I thought it was really interesting, and it kind of almost made sense. It made me almost justify Starfleet's decision, and Picard's both. Like, I could see both perspectives. Did you guys pull anything from this part? Oh, and also the beginning scene when the gentleman at the front desk doesn't know who he is. I thought that was pretty funny. Picard looks pretty insulted.
The first time we hear the F-bomb in Star Trek.
There's a lot of cussing in this episode too. I noticed that.
We've heard it in Discovery, but the first time in Picard.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard the F-bomb and Discovery. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, there's a lot of cussing in that one too.
Bummer.
It's kind of like they've taken a lot of the family friendliness of Star Trek, and I don't know. It's like they've vulgared it up for no reason.
I really agree with that because I had always looked at these people as being above that,
Yeah,
right.
Agreed.
I mean, it's just one of those things. As far as Gene Roddenberry wanted a family show, did he not?
Yeah, he did, and he did a pretty good job of steering away from a lot of that. Aside from, Kirk's conquest, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, I could see it if it was one big thing. They're about to crash. I can see somebody dropping the F-bomb. But just yeah, exactly. But just in daily conversation, it's just kind of weird to me. I notice it every time,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and that's the show. It's just wasn't really needed, but I don't know. I mean, that doesn't detract from it. What I think that show was good, but modern society isn't necessarily a better society.
Oh, that's true.
Than what it was 20 years ago.
Just seems gratuitous.
Yeah, agreed.
Outside of that, I think that there was a lot of detail that we kind of gleaned from that conversation about how Starfleet views him as being
a liability.
Huh?
Almost like a liability.
No, I wouldn't say like a liability, but more like when she said that he is, I can't remember if she said relic from the past or that's just how I logged it in my mind, but as a washed up, captain that needed to recognize this place and go back home, basically, like I was like, oh crap, like she means business on that one, and I kind of feel like that's how Starfleet sort of views him, since he didn't fall in line with what Starfleet wanted to do back 14 years prior.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of how I viewed it. Was he's on the outs because he didn't toe the company line.
Which is pretty crazy because how Picard always had like good reasoning behind decisions that he made and was able to justify his decisions that he did in the entire Next Generation run.
Well,
And
even
the
if you
fact
look,
that all those past positive things that he did for Starfleet, I mean, and one thing that he did, I guess, just kind of negated it all. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy.
yeah, if you look at like the Next Generation, like every time there's like a upper echelon of Starfleet coming to visit the Enterprise, and they have some sort of insane request. I mean, he goes with it until he can find like a good, valid reason to be like, this is probably not what we need to be doing, But he doesn't just like outright just tell them like, no, I'm not going to do this. So it's very interesting that like you said, it's kind of just like a one thing and he's out, but he's always been kind of maybe like a thorn in their side, where instead of just putting up and shutting up, like he does try to buck their authority.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it kind of seemed like maybe he hurt some feelings when he left, because there seems to be some bitterness with that.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely felt that too.
Yeah, you would think they would have been more than happy for him to leave if they were that upset with him. But yeah, I felt a bitterness there.
All right, next up we get one of my favorite scenes, I think. We're back on the Borg cube. We find out that it's not a prison like we originally thought from the trailer. It's actually referenced as an artifact, or like kind of like a museum almost. And it's an active site where they are harvesting basically the Borg. So they're harvesting augmentations off of them and limbs, or whatever the technology they can get off of them. And then it sounded to me like they were just letting them back into society without the equipment. Maybe I hope we get some more reference to that. What do you guys think of this scene?
It's fascinating that they're actually studying the cube and going into parts that may still be occupied by Borg drones that have been disconnected from the collective, and they're dissecting them. I thought that was a really interesting way for them to lack of a better term, assimilate the technology into Romulan technology. I didn't really get the museum vibe that you did. I kind of got the Area 51 sort of vibe from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, where that's going to go, that's going to be cool.
Was kind of wondering if they weren't going to slave them or something like that, turn them into slaves.
You've seen a bunch of races, or what you want to call it there. For instance, that her first initial trip, she got halfway there and they said, oh no, you can't come, and like revoked her access to it or whatever. So I think it seemed to me like they were letting a bunch of different races and civilizations in there to basically study, and that's what made me think of a museum, I guess, because they referenced it. Like the guy when he first met with the crowd, he's like, okay, stay out of the gray zones. If your pen turns blue, you need to run, or whatever color it was. It just reminded me a lot of like a museum guide, basically.
Did they ever specifically say like what the artifact was? Is it something we haven't been shown yet?
No, I think it's the whole cube itself is the artifact.
Yeah, they're just calling it the artifact
Because it's no longer an active Borg cube.
Well, I didn't know if it was like the central plexus that we learn about in Voyager, where it's the heart of several key systems that traditionally you wouldn't be able to have access to. So I didn't know if there's like some secret part of the ship that they're still trying to get access to, and they haven't quite made it yet. And that's kind of where they're slowly working their way to it.
Well, I know they had during First Contact, didn't they talk about getting to like the central nexus or something like that, which was going to be that's not the right term, but whatever term they used for the central computer of the collective, which would have given them, nearly the entire, library of the Borg knowledge, basically. So I have to imagine that they're after something like that, or even just the ability to assimilate.
Well, that's kind of what I got from it too, is that they weren't collecting just to study, but probably for future use even. So that's kind of interesting.
I think Daj referenced that they're selling the parts for money.
Oh,
So-
really? I missed that part.
I'm interested in finding out who they're selling it to, what they're using it for, and really what they're doing with the Borg, because they kept him alive I'm pretty sure that's why we got the heartbeat music at the kind of like in the background of that whole scene. Is how I took it. And then she talked to him, and in what language was that? Did anybody know? It didn't sound like Romulan, but I wasn't
No.
sure.
I do not know.
No clue.
So we go back in the next scene. We have Picard talking to Dr. Agnes, and we learn that Dah's memories were in fact artificial, and that she did apply to Daystrom, but her application and her specs were too perfect. And so this made her investigate it and figured out that she has a history going back about 3 years, but that's it. And another interesting pull from this is when the scene first starts, we see her reading an Isaac Asimov book, the one who wrote a bunch of novels about robots and AI, and it's where we got iRobot. And I thought that was a nice little pull. Also, I don't know if you guys knew this, but him and Roddenberry were friends.
I did not know that.
I didn't either until I started researching it. And he actually helped on a couple Star Trek episodes for like tech stuff. And also, my favorite part of the scene is she orders the Earl Grey tea. Which
how about the part of Jean-Luc Picard saying he never got into science fiction?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, that was funny. That was good. So is this Jean-Luc's daughter that he doesn't know about?
Negative.
No.
I don't think so either. I was joking about that because when we first watched the teasers, I think I'm the one that said that's his daughter. But yeah, we obviously know.
You thought everybody is everybody's daughter, so I'm not surprised.
That's Worf's daughter.
Hey, every female is a daughter to someone.
That could potentially be Riker's daughter with maybe that one random alien he slept with.
Which random alien?
the Irish woman?
I was either thinking that one or potentially the one the species that everybody's the same gender. It could have been that one too.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
That was a good episode.
I couldn't remember her name for the other one. Was it Famke Janssen played her? I can't think of the character name though.
It could be anyone for Riker. We all know that. All right. So, do we have any thoughts on this? I think we covered it pretty well. Has anybody got anything else to add for that scene?
Again, I'm just curious on why all this available information is still available to be accessed, and if people are researching it. And obviously, this is something that the Team 9, what is it? What is that? Team 9, or what is the secret society for the Federation?
Section 31.
Section 31. Obviously, they're watching it, right? So if anybody's pulling information about the Daj, I mean, how come they're not in danger of being killed? Like, why haven't they come in and tried to secure the doctor?
I think it's just like it seems like the Federation's just kind of on the back foot on this one. Like they're being controlled, or they're just not in the game at the moment.
All right, and then shortly after this, we see the scene with Picard. He pulls out a tin that has his old comm badge in it, and he requests help from Raffi.
Who's
so
that?
I thought exactly right. So first of all, I guess I need to research my information on comm badges. Does that link to your to whoever, like by him saying, "Hey, Raffi, I need a ship"? Does that actually go to her, even though she's on looks like a different whole section of the planet, or maybe a different planet herself? Does anybody know anything about that? I thought that was interesting.
I think communicators in Star Trek do whatever they needed to do during that episode. I've seen them do lots of different things.
It seemed like a very confusing scene. I almost wish they wouldn't have had it in there because it really didn't play any part because he ends up flying there anyways. So I don't know. I was confused by the whole thing. So we'll move on. Next up, we see the Vulcan Commander. Commodore, excuse me. I think they called her O later on. And she's talking to the Admiral that Picard went and seen. And basically, the Admiral is explaining, hey, Picard was here. He might be a problem. He was going to go look for Bruce Maddox. And immediately after they hang up, Commodore basically requests a conference with someone. And we've come to find out that is Sarek, or not Sarek. Sorry, what's his name? Nerix. That's funny. I didn't realize they were so close together. Oh my God, it's Spock's other brother.
Oh my God.
No, so soon we find out that that's actually Nerix's sister, who has infiltrated the Federation. And so we get a scene with her and Commodore O, and they both sound pretty dirty to me. What do you guys think about that?
Oh yeah, she definitely is. But I think that Rizzo or whatever her name was, she's actually the Romulan agent. But the Commodore, I think she's just an asset. I don't know that she's also Romulan.
I bet the O's definitely think she's in charge. Maybe Tal Shiar that's like in place there. But yeah, I bet her subordinates actually part of the secret society portion of it who actually would outrank her at that point.
So here's what I think. I think that Romulan guy, Narek, or whatever his name is, that's on the board of the ship with the twin, I think that's Section 31. And that's why they didn't try to apprehend her. I don't necessarily think he's Romulan. He doesn't act like a standard Romulan, doesn't hold himself like a regular Romulan. I don't think he's Romulan at all. Because he even referenced when I didn't think the Romulans were ever that cute. No, they're not, because I don't think it's
That's an interesting
Romulan.
theory. I hadn't thought about that at all.
Yeah, that is an interesting idea.
Does his sister know that? Is she Section 31 too, or is she?
Yes.
So they both are.
I think all three of them are actually Section 31. I don't think
they're all three
Hey,
Section
Romulan.
31. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was done.
I was going to say, if they're all three Section 31, that would mean the kill squads that killed Dodge earlier would be Section 31 as well.
Right. And the reason I think that is because the information was erased from the Federation computers, and there's so many ships flying around. There had to have been other sensors that had reported that explosion. I don't think it's the Romulans that are attacking it like that.
Well, it would be some good misdirection, though.
Yeah, that's true.
You might be right.
But Narek's sister, when she goes and visits him, warps into his office as a hologram. She almost acts like they're kind of on their own mission together, and they're just using Commander O right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm betting they're part of the Romulan Secret Society, whatever that name of that was. And like Commodore O might be like a Romulan agent, but like they're on their own mission. And we kind of see that in the Next Generation with like Romulans and how the Tal Shiar just show up and take over, except they're a little bit more well known. But I bet like Commander O's in charge of some mission, but they're on their own mission, so they're going to preempt her essentially.
Well,
I think
again, I'm going to mash those two theories together and say, what if Commodore O thinks that Rizzo is actually part of Section 31, but she's actually part of the Romulan? You know what I mean? There's some misdirection there as well.
Yeah, I definitely think she's a double agent of some sort.
Double or triple?
Yeah.
Quadruple.
Octuple.
Well, she references them blowing up their chance at capturing the thing, which I thought was an interesting way to word it. That's what kind of made me think it was like a hybrid of a Borg and a human, maybe of some sort.
Well, they said abomination because they referenced the fact that they don't trust synthetics or AIs anyway. So if they are part of that deep Romulan organization, then of course they would call it abomination.
And then also later on, Narek referenced something about finding the nest, or one of them does. So it makes me think there's like a pod of them. It's not going to be just Dodge and her twin sister that got blown up, you know? There's more, is what I thought.
Yeah, or they believe there's more. I don't know.
I think they reference that a couple times, like when they're speaking with each other, how it's almost indicated there's more than one pair.
Right. I kind of took it that way too. All right, so the very last scene, well, sorry, next to last scene, we kind of skipped ahead to the last one, but is we see Picard arriving and so basically he arrives and we see she's living at the very famous rock where Kirk fought the Gorin, and a couple other scenes from Star Trek have been filmed. And she wants nothing to do with him, stops him at phaser point, basically, or phaser rifle, I think she had. And he always got to say is there is a secret Romulan operative going on in Starfleet, and she immediately reacts, and then she asks, is that a bottle of 86? And he has his, apparently the best wine possible because it gets him in to speak with her. So, did you guys pull anything else from this scene?
Only that I'm looking forward to whatever's in the next episode about that.
Oh, my other
it's Geordi's daughter.
Well, my other thought was I think I think they've worked together in the past. Did you guys not get that from the? I think that's why he had the commander badge, the comm badge, and then also his one Romulan Tal Shiar friend said that you need someone who hates you, but how do you word it? Who hates you but you can trust, or something like that.
So
She could have been like the captain of some starship that got called into action when all that happened or went down. Someone that he
she was the
called
first
to do
officer.
something, huh?
I bet she was his first officer on the Victory or Vindictor or whatever it was, that starship that he commanded. And because she followed him, she knew it was the right thing to do, and then she hates him for it because he got her discharged from Starfleet.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that theory.
I like that a lot, actually. Will, that sounds perfect.
I'm betting she's Section 31.
Everybody's Section 31.
I bet you she's Section 31's daughter.
Yeah. All right, I think we wrapped this episode. Any final thoughts that we missed, guys and girls?
I'm just going to say that the show is moving slower than I imagined it would.
Absolutely.
I think that I really wish last week's episode was a 2-hour premiere, and I really wish this episode had a bit more oomph to it. But it felt, I mean, it was great, don't get me wrong, but it just is moving slower than I expected this series to move.
I agree with that, Brad, 100%. I mean, I kind of got, I guess, spoiled a little bit with The Mandalorian, where everything was just so action packed and so much went down every single episode. And this one is really creeping. I mean, I agree with you. It's like really not much happened, in my opinion, this episode as far as like to progress the story, except for answer questions from the first one.
I agree with that.
I liked it. I think the problem that it's The Mandalorian is fantastic, but it's a new series. You don't really need to know much backstory. And I agree. I think it would have worked really well at the 2-hour premiere, because that way we could have got caught up with the characters again, and then like start to present how the story is starting. I think it just would be hard to push in straight into the action, because it's been so long since we've seen Picard and Star Trek in this particular era, where you almost have to get a little bit caught up for what's happened in the last however many years.
Yeah, but I mean, Discovery kind of carved the same path right there, and Discovery's premiere was a longer premiere, first of all, and second of all, it was way more action packed and delivered way more information in a much more concise little package. I feel like sometimes we've gotten more out of the short treks than we've gotten out of this entire episode.
Oh yeah.
I feel like we got a ton of information. I don't know.
Well, I think that's all this episode was just information. They're setting us up for the next few, I think.
Right. And it just seems slow because of that.
Yeah, maybe.
See, and you mentioned Mandalorian. I feel like Mandalorian took forever to tell its story, and we just had a bunch of random stuff going on and adventures that didn't really matter at the end, really.
Well, yeah, but Mandalorian, every episode of Mandalorian had a natural climax, and then either ended on a cliffhanger or gave us something to look forward to next week. And I kind of feel bad for you, Will, because you didn't watch what's going to happen next week. And this one, I think, just they drove this episode off the edge of a cliff here with no hanger. I mean, it just was, well, we're done.
Right. Not really caring who this Rizzo character is, to be honest with you. I mean, if they would have ended up with Riker, him going to see Riker.
That would have been good.
Right. Because he needs a ship, that's all he's asking for. If he would have called for Riker to get him a ship, because he was still good and standing with Starfleet.
Well, I think this Raffi is, I think it is his new Riker.
Yeah, I think we don't know that yet. I mean, and that's the part that I don't think that was enough of a savory tidbit to carry us over for 7 days. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not nearly as hyped or energized right now as I figured I would be on episode 2 of Picard.
Right.
I think they needed to retool the last act a little bit to
make
it better. I think I thought the episode was good, but I thought that last act where we just kind of show up and we don't really get any story other than like who this person is and what they mean to Picard, and it's just like, okay, well, see you next week.
Yeah, it did seem to end rather abruptly.
Yeah, there was no next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Speaking of next time, thanks for listening to our podcast. Stay tuned for next week where we cover episode 3 of Star Trek Picard. Have yourself a great evening.